Having said that, we need to be clear on what we are doing here today on this particular vote. I don't want to give the wrong perception to the public that this program may continue in the future. As I noted, photo red lights will be gone in 4 days. Cameras need to come down immediately to not create a smoke screen to affect the hope that we may turn them back on.
We don't need to keep dealing with an Arizona contractor. It's time to end this contract once and for all.
But as far as where we're at today, the question is, and I think it's unanimous, to stop the program, and then the next phase is how do we then remove the equipment, and how do we end up cleaning up those citations, not the 500,000 or 600,000 or 65,000 that are outstanding, but the process that's going to take place. Okay, why can't we do a month-at-a-time contract? See, my concern is that if we don't cut the tie on this, it'll continue to linger and linger and linger indefinitely. And I understand that originally the company wanted $72,000 the first month to continue processing. That, to me, is obviously extremely expensive. But now we're coming to the dollars and cents. Why don't we condition on a 1 month at a time, and as we find whatever is happening, and then we continue it, or we stop it at that particular time. I've heard 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, which I think is really counterproductive to what we're trying to accomplish. And then the other question is to remove the equipment to say we're done with this program. And then regarding the equipment being taken down?
There was a suggestion in committee yesterday that the contractor be responsible for removal of all aspects of the deconstruction. We did discuss that with the vendor. The proposal that we received this morning did not acknowledge that the vendor would be responsible for removal of all equipment. So that's an issue that we need to follow up with them.
It seems to me that the last thing we should be doing is, somebody said, you know, we need to stop beating this dead horse. Yes, we need to stop beating this dead horse. The contract expires July 31st. Let it die. Enough already. Let's just be done with this and move on.
And then in addition, I'd like to move that we immediately instruct the CAO and CLA to negotiate the phase-out and bring this back to Council for the phase-out portion of it, that further that the terms of that contract for the phase-out, the scope of work that shall be amended to delete any obligation to operate the cameras after August 1st. All other processing obligations will continue as we discussed, and the amount in which we'll pay for that. I also want to add that we ensure cost neutrality at a minimum, that there's no cost as part of this phase out to the city over and above the collection rate. And we ask the vendor to remove their equipment along with the installed city equipment if possible, based on the contracts and that we have in the MOU at no cost. And so I would like to ask my colleagues to support that.
Thank you. That is our last speaker, believe it or not. As such, Mr. Clerk, if we can walk through the motions that have been made in reverse order. I think Mr. Zine's motion was the last one. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Could we restate the content of that for the record, Mr. Zine?
The matter on 42 and 43, that we would accept and receive and file the controller's audit and the communications from the Los Angeles Police Commission, and that the Budget and Finance Committee report, and there is a subsequent report from Audit Government Efficiency, that the enforcement program will terminate midnight July 31st, and that the CLA will review with the current vendor the cleanup procedure. And in addition to that, for Mr. Kokora and Mr. Koretz, the city attorney would then decide if there's any appropriate expenditure or none regarding the cleanup language for the outstanding matters on the photo red light enforcement program. I think that should cover what Mr. Koretz had brought forward, and that we would again conclude the program midnight July 31st, and as far as what happens after that with the pending citation, etc., that language will be worked out with the CLA and the vendor, and if there's any cost that the company would incur versus the city, that would also be reviewed by the City Attorney's Office as requested by Mr. Kokori and Mr. Koretz.
Okay.
That was the motion.
Everybody clear on that?
What part do you want me to go over?
I want the city clerk to tell us what we're voting.
Yes, me.
I'd hate to paraphrase what the maker of the motion has said, so I would certainly defer to the maker of the motion.
Mr.
Thank you,
Zine?
Mr. Alcon. Thank you, Mr. Alcon. Is there any clarification
Folks,
you need?
why don't you clarify if anybody, before we vote, anything else? So you have receive and file the audit, the Budget and Finance report and the AGE report to terminate the program July 31st, but the CLA will review cleanup procedures. Is that the extent?
That's it.
Okay. Is that clear?
And then the add-on, Mr. Koretz, Mr. Kokorian, regarding the City Attorney's review to decide if the city should pay for additional cost or if that should be by the vendor.
So if I may, Mr. President, just as a point of information, the motion does not then imply that an amendment to the contract is necessary. The motion includes an instruction of the city attorney to negotiate and advise the council as to whether or not any amendment or supplemental contract or no action at all,
correct,
other than a demand letter to the contractor, is necessary. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's it, in legalese language, Mr. Kokorian.
So on Mr. Zine's motion, is there any objection to it? If there's no objection, then that will amend what we have before, or I guess let's go ahead and just take a vote on it. Let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay. That is approved.